The menstrual cycle is the body's monthly process of preparing for a possible pregnancy. It begins on day 1, when the uterus starts shedding its inner lining. This shedding is what we know as menstruation, or a period. During this phase, the thickened lining from the previous cycle breaks down and exits the body. At the same time, hormones in the brain begin signaling the ovaries to start a new cycle. The hypothalamus and pituitary gland release signals that help control what happens next. Inside the ovaries, tiny sacs called follicles begin to grow. Each follicle contains an immature egg, but usually only one becomes dominant. What idea do you want to bring to life? As the cycle continues, one follicle grows faster and becomes the leading follicle. Meanwhile, menstrual bleeding gradually slows down and then stops. After the period ends, the uterine lining begins to grow again. This new lining is built to create a nourishing environment in case pregnancy occurs. One major hormone driving this phase is estrogen. As the dominant follicle grows, it produces increasing amounts of estrogen. Estrogen tells the uterine lining to thicken and become richer in blood vessels. So the uterus shifts from shedding tissue to actively rebuilding it. By the middle of the cycle, the dominant follicle has matured. Then, a sudden surge of luteinizing hormone triggers ovulation. Ovulation happens when the mature follicle releases its egg. This usually occurs around day 14 in a typical 28-day cycle. The ovary releases a mature egg. Once released, the egg is guided toward the fallopian tube. Finger-like structures called fimbriae help sweep the egg inward. The egg then begins its journey through the fallopian tube toward the uterus. Tiny hair-like structures and muscular movements help move it along. Back in the ovary, the emptied follicle does not disappear right away. It transforms into the corpus luteum. It transforms into a temporary hormone-producing structure called the corpus luteum. The corpus luteum produces progesterone, another key hormone in the cycle. Progesterone helps make the uterine lining thicker, softer, and more supportive. This prepares the uterus in case a fertilized egg needs to implant. At this point, the body is fully prepared for the possibility of pregnancy. What idea do you want to bring to life? If sperm enter the reproductive tract, they may travel upward toward the fallopian tubes. They move from the vagina through the cervix and uterus in search of the egg. Fertilization usually happens in the fallopian tube, not inside the uterus itself. When sperm reach the egg, many may surround it, but usually only one enters. When one sperm successfully enters the egg, fertilization occurs. The fertilized egg is now called a zygote. As it travels, the zygote begins dividing into more and more cells. Over the next few days, it continues toward the uterus as an early embryo. If conditions are right, the embryo can attach to the uterine lining. This process is called implantation, and it is the beginning of pregnancy. But if the egg is not fertilized, the cycle takes a different path. The unfertilized egg survives only for a short time before it begins to break down. At the same time, the corpus luteum starts to shrink. As it disappears, progesterone and estrogen levels fall. Without these hormonal signals, the uterine lining can no longer stay stable. The upper layers begin to break apart and pull away from the uterine wall. This sets the stage for menstruation to begin again, and that brings the body back to day 1 of a new menstrual cycle. The cycle is often divided into 4 main phases: menstruation, follicular phase, ovulation, and luteal phase. Menstruation is the shedding phase, when the uterine lining leaves the body. The follicular phase is when follicles grow and the lining begins rebuilding. What idea do you want to bring to life? Ovulation is the release of a mature egg from the ovary. The luteal phase is when progesterone helps maintain the uterine lining. Not every cycle is exactly 28 days, and variation is common. What idea do you want to bring to life? Some people have shorter cycles, while others have longer ones. What idea do you want to bring to life? What matters most is that the brain, ovaries, and uterus are working in coordination. Together, hormones guide egg development, ovulation, and the rise and fall of the uterine lining. Understanding this cycle helps explain fertility, periods, and many normal body changes. In simple terms, the menstrual cycle is the body's repeating rhythm of preparation and renewal. And that is how the menstrual cycle works, from menstruation to ovulation and back again. What idea do you want to bring to life?